Hello and welcome to Mobile World. Episode 1, Before 5G, A History of Fixed Communications. This episode will be an introduction on the need for communications, and on how the first landlines appeared in the world. Full disclaimer, some content will be from Wikipedia, and I will provide the link in the description. Now, let's get started. Today, 5G networks are all the rage, and are what everybody in the telecommunication world is talking about, but it has also raised concerns outside the telecommunication circle. Inside the telecom world, the major concern is change, cost and training, but outside it is a fear of the unknown, or better said, a fear becoming victims to an untested and rushed technology. What we will endeavor on this channel is to present how telecommunication networks evolved, how we got to where we are, and why each new standard, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, is actually being developed since before the last standard is even fully implemented. And yes, today, while people are scared of 5G, companies are already working on 6G, and in 5 to 10 years' time, when the first commercial 6G networks will roll out, the same fears and protests will appear again as they did for 5G in recent times, and for 4G in the past, and so on and so on. But where did it all start? We all know about 2G or GSM, 3G or WCDMA, 4G or LTE, and now 5G. But to understand these relatively recent standards, we need to look back into the past and check how necessity dictated the evolution of certain technologies. Communications, in one form or another, have always been at the heart of human society. As humans evolved and spread across the earth, it became clear that the people settlements near major trade routes had an advantage and quickly developed into major cities. These cities had an advantage in controlling the trade routes, and also in quickly acquiring new information about possible threats. When empires rose, the ease of transporting information was not only used to warn of invading armies, but also to manage distant provinces from a central location. The best-known example of the importance of communications is represented by the Greek soldier Phidippides, a messenger that ran 42 kilometers from the Battle of Marathon to Athens, and reported the victory. Another example of how trade, but also communication, can help an empire grow, is the one of the Roman Empire, which owes a lot of its success to the infrastructure and roads it created to unite and govern all of its distant regions. To conclude, communications have always been vital to any society, but in ancient times, they relied on drums and smoke signals in parts of Africa, America and Asia, and later on horseback riders and birds like carrier pigeons for delivering written text. And it has been this way for many centuries, with small exceptions, like using mirrors to send signals by reflecting the sun, as done by Roman Emperor Tiberius in AD 26 to 37, or by firing the ship's cannons and raising flags, as done by ships on Ferdinand Magellan's voyage in 1520. It was only in the 19th century that the first electrical telecommunication systems started to appear, although early attempts on constructing a communication device using electricity started from the beginning of the 18th century. The first working telegraph was built by Francis Ronalds in 1816. Charles Wheatstone and William Fothergill Cooke patented a 5-needle, 6-wire system, which entered commercial use in 1838. It used the deflection of needles to represent messages and started operating over 21 kilometers, 13 miles, of the Great Western Railway, on April 9, 1839. Both Wheatstone and Cooke viewed their device as an improvement to the existing electromagnetic telegraph, not as a new device. On the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, Samuel Morse developed a version of the electrical telegraph, which he demonstrated on September 2, 1837. Alfred Vail saw this demonstration and joined Morse to develop the register, a telegraph terminal that integrated a logging device for recording messages to paper tape. This was demonstrated successfully over 3 miles, or 5 kilometers, on January 6, 1838, and eventually over 40 miles, or 64 kilometers, between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, on May 24, 1844. The patented invention proved lucrative, and by 1851, telegraph lines in the United States spanned over 20,000 miles, or 32,000 kilometers. Morse's most important technical contribution to this telegraph was the simple and highly efficient Morse code, co-developed with Vail, which was an important advance over Wheatstone's more complicated and expensive system and required just 2 wires. The communications efficiency of the Morse code preceded that of the Huffman code in digital communications by over 100 years, but Morse and Vail developed the code purely empirically, with shorter codes for more frequent letters. The submarine cable across the English Channel was laid in 1851. Transatlantic cables, installed in 1857 and 1858, only operated for a few days or weeks, and carried messages of greetings back and forth between James Buchanan and Queen Victoria, before they failed. The project to lay a replacement line was delayed for 5 years by the American Civil War. The first successful transatlantic telegraph cable was completed on July 27, 1866, allowing continuous transatlantic telecommunication for the first time. The master telephone patent was granted to Alexander Graham Bell on March 7, 1876. The electric telephone was invented in the 1870s, based on earlier work with harmonic or multi-signal telegraphs. The first commercial telephone services were set up in 1878 and 1879, on both sides of the Atlantic, in the cities of New Haven, Connecticut in the US and London, England in the UK. Alexander Graham Bell held the master patent for the telephone that was needed for such services in both countries. All other patents for electric telephone devices and features flowed from this master patent. Credit for the invention of the electric telephone has been frequently disputed, and new controversies over the issue have arisen from time to time. As with other great inventions, such as the radio, the television, the light bulb, and the digital computer, there were several inventors who did pioneering experimental work on voice transmission over a wire, who then improved on each other's ideas. However, the key innovators were Alexander Graham Bell and Gardiner Green Hubbard, who created the first telephone company, the Bell Telephone Company in the United States, which later evolved into American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, at times the world's largest phone company. Telephone technology grew quickly after the first commercial services emerged, with intercity lines and telephone exchanges being built in every major city of the United States by the mid-1880s. The first transcontinental telephone call occurred on January 25, 1915. Despite this, transatlantic voice communication remained impossible for customers until January 7, 1927, when a connection was established using radio. However, no cable connection existed until TAT-1 was inaugurated, on September 25, 1956, providing 36 telephone circuits. In 1880, Bell and co-inventor Charles Sumner Tainter conducted the world's first wireless telephone call via modulated light beams projected by photophones. The scientific principles of their invention would not be utilized for several decades when they were first deployed in military and fiber optic communications. The first transatlantic telephone cable, that incorporated hundreds of electronic amplifiers, was not operational until 1956, only 6 years before the first commercial telecommunications satellite, Telstar, was launched into space. With the emergence of the telegraph, and later the telephone, the world got its first glimpse on what it was about to become, an interconnected society, where distances seem to vanish at the press of a button. In the videos to come, we will focus on the emergence of the most well-known mobile standards. Until then, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.